Hello and welcome to another MovieBoozer.com virtual pubcast. I'm your host, Ken Ekman, and I'm joined by Bill Arsenault today.
Hey,
And Hawk Ripjaw will be joining us later, and perhaps even Bill Leon. You never know. It's always a surprise here. Well, okay, sometimes.
well, right.
It's always a surprise sometimes. It's like the Anchorman thing.
It's always a surprise. Sometimes.
Yeah. And even that's a surprise.
Yeah, right.
So we have a lot of movies to discuss this week, and I'm going to lead off with a couple movies I caught up on. First of all, I want to quickly mention that I did see Pacific Rim Uprising.
So you were the one that saw it.
Yeah. I am the one person who saw it. I take it you did not see it?
No, I mean I was planning on it, but I revisited the trailers and then I read up some more on it, like the reviews and stuff. And normally I don't let reviews of movies. I mean, I read reviews and I find them to be insightful and get me in a good mood to see a movie, no matter what, even if it's negative.
You're right.
But in the case of Pacific Rim Uprising, what they were pointing to with regards to the plot, it made me feel like this was a cheap way to make a sequel.
And I wouldn't say it's a cheap way to make a sequel, because it's certainly
not in terms of special effects and yeah, right, but I meant like in a cheap excuse to make a sequel. Like someone came up with a story idea and was like, well, how do we make up for the fact that the first movie solved the problem?
Yeah, that's exactly it. With the thing that there are a few things in this that are legitimately kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Actually, the reason why there is still a problem, I bought. I'm going to go ahead and spoil it because I don't think.
No, I already know what happened, but yeah, we can spoil it. That's fine.
Well, Charlie Day is actually, his brain's been taken over by one of the aliens in the first film, which is
because he drifted with an alien brain or half of an alien brain in the first movie,
right?
And now he's connected to that species somehow.
Right, and you know what? I buy that. That's fine.
I guess. I mean, I don't know. It kind of ruined it a little for me because in the first movie, the movie was almost like Guillermo del Toro's version of Independence Day. You know what I mean? Like characters coming together to fight the good fight and
save the day. They made an unnecessary sequel to that too.
Yes, they did. Resurgence, Uprising, like what the Regurgence, yes. That would you want to talk about hot garbage? Like really hot garbage, the kind with maggots and stuff. I mean, that's Independence Day Resurgence. That has no reason to exist whatsoever.
Yeah. So,
although it did have that one little interesting side bit of stuff that happened in between the two movies, involving a ground fight with the aliens in Africa. That could have been cool to see. Like, we're going to take out the little soldiers that are scattered around the planet,
Right.
But then they had to not show that.
Well, that's... Here's the thing. Pacific Rim Uprising it's a movie that doesn't need to exist.
Yeah.
And being fair, the first movie doesn't really even...
Yeah, I mean, I guess that criticism of movies needing to exist or not needing to exist is kind of harsh and a little ignorant, I guess, to say, because no movie really needs to exist.
You know what? I mean, it depends on your definition of need.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is like Apocalypse Now, for example, that's a movie I feel like I would want in my version of reality. That's a movie that could have won the Nobel Peace Prize, possibly. Yeah, that's going a long way to say it, but I'm just saying, like, that potentially it could have at least been nominated for something.
Yeah, there are several films out there that I think could potentially have at some point in time, and
yeah, but what I'm getting at is, like, I guess when we throw around that phrase, this movie shouldn't have existed or doesn't have to exist or doesn't need to exist. It's kind of easy to say that, is what I'm getting at. It's not. It's much more difficult to get into the nitty gritty and really observe and analyze a movie. And really, I mean, let me ask you, as a form of as a form of popcorn. And I don't like that word in terms of big blockbusters, but it's kind of accurate. Popcorn entertainment. Does Pacific Rim Uprising make you feel good? Does it make you want to eat popcorn and enjoy a movie?
No,
Oh, so it doesn't even succeed at what it's trying to do.
not in the least. It is barely passable in my eyes. The only thing that really carried it for me
Yeah.
was the fact that Charlie Day is, he's funny, and as the sort of villain of the movie, I thought that was an interesting twist that kind of worked for me. But and Burn Gorman, the guy who plays his opposite number, that his character's kind of, he's got this kind of mad scientist thing going.
Mad scientist, squirrely kind of character.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think his character's name is Gottlieb or something.
Yeah, exactly.
He's the mathematician. He does all that. I would have expected him to be the bad guy if they had to pick one of the scientists to be the bad, because he just looks like a bad guy.
And by the way, the trailer literally tries to make you think that he's going to be the bad guy, because if you watch the trailer, you hear that whole speech saying there, and there's the way the editor inserts Charlie Day's face when he says, like, if they believe in you, and then it switches to Burn Gorman's face when he says, and or those that didn't believe in you.
Oh yeah, so, yeah. They kind of did some trickery there in the trailers, but I remember Guillermo del Toro being asked about possible sequels or possible mashups with the Godzilla franchise or the King Kong franchise and stuff, and he said, if I were to do a sequel, or if I were to approve a sequel, the reason why the Drift would reopen would be because of Ron Perlman's character from the first movie.
Who is not in this film.
Who's not in this film, right. He's the black market dealer of kaiju organs and technology and stuff. And that would have been really interesting, because it's like, well, his whole business is destroyed now. Mm-hmm. The Drift is gone. So he's got to find a way to kind of open it back up. And now it's like, oh, the good guy scientist who was just a fan?
Yeah.
Because that's a little cheap. I was like, I don't know.
See, I don't mind that. The explanation at least has some coherence to it.
I guess.
Honestly, I don't have that much else to say about this movie. It's just kind of there.
Not to keep harping on the movie, because we want to move on to other movies, but let me ask you, one of the things that Guillermo del Toro mentioned in the behind the scenes of Pacific Rim, was how he wanted to kind of replicate these old paintings of giant creatures or statues in comparison and in relation to regular people. He really wanted to bring the weight and the size and the sheer scale of these robots and these monsters to the screen. And in fact, it was very effective in his movie. There seemed to be a lot of weight, to the action, to the move. There seemed to be a lot of gravity going on. They weren't just flying around like Spider-Man. Is that carried over in the sequel, or is it a lot more? Are the rules kind of thrown out the window?
I guess you're going to need to explain this a little bit more to me.
Well, you know what I mean. Like, all right, the kaiju and the Jaegers, are they abiding by the laws of physics in this movie? I guess that's a better way of saying it. Or are they just flying around and jumping around with no regard for the environment?
There's a lot of Gundam shit in this movie. It's okay. Yeah, no, I mean, and here's the thing. I agree with you. There's a lot of heft to them in the first film. Unfortunately, the first film was also shot entirely at fucking night, and you.
Well, I think that was that was intentional because
It was intentional to hide the shitty CGI. Yeah,
whatever imperfections there were in the CGI, which could be shitty, could be whatever, you can hide it in a clever or cost-effective way. I'll just make it night. It's like, oh yeah, right, in the shadows. That's, okay.
Hide it in the shadows.
Now it's like, no, we want to see them bright as day. And then they have that one shot in the trailer where the camera zooms in on each Jaeger as they get their weapons ready, and they go from one Jaeger to the next, to the next, to the next. I was like, oh, this is a cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
And then they show an actual live action actor, and I'm like, oh, no, it's not. I was like, wait, what? Why is Scott Eastwood here? What?
Why is Scott Eastwood? That's my question.
Yeah, but I was like, why are the Jaeger pilots still a thing? We won the war.
Well, I mean, the hint, what the movie does, sort of right, is the reason why they're still around is, that threat of the war, potentially coming back, and because they don't know what this alien race is planning, and if they're capable of creating another rift.
So the success of the ending of the first movie gave the governments of the world confidence in the Jaeger pilots, and we're like, all right, the Jaeger program, while we're not sure if the aliens are going to come back, we at least know this works, so we're going to fund you guys.
Well, at the time that this is taking place, though, they're actually, funding has become a major problem for them. And
the same thing in the first movie. First movie was like, funding is dried up, we're going to go with a wall.
Right, but in this case, funding is drying up, and it's drying up for the reason that less and less people believe that the aliens are going to be coming back.
Oh, okay. So each movie in the series is going to involve the issue of funding.
Budgetary constraints.
Budgetary constraints. Like, sorry, we're going to have to cut the budget down. So get rid of some pilots and some Jaegers, and we'll meet with you again in a year.
Right, and the conceit of this is that a company is going to be is manufacturing these drone Jaegers.
Yeah.
And of course, what does Charlie Day do? He takes control of the drone Jaegers.
You think the drone Jaegers would be all manic and bipolar-ish because of Charlie Day being taken over them? They'd just be jittery and everything. Like they're on a lot of caffeine.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the best scene in this entire movie that I really enjoyed was when the reveal when you find out that Charlie Day's character is secretly evil, because he keeps referencing earlier in the film, you got to meet my wife sometime. And he comes home and he's like, he comes home to his apartment and he's like talking to his off-screen wife, and in a really creepy way, the kind of way that you only see like serial killers do in movies.
Mm-hmm.
And then it finally pans over and he's talking to the brain thing that he drifted with, and is like treating it like it's his freaking wife. It is ridiculously funny.
It sounds like a Ghostbusters type thing almost.
Oh, totally. And that sort of humor should have been throughout the movie, but it really only exists when Charlie is on screen.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate, but at least it's good that they had those moments. That's fine.
Yeah, and I dig Charlie Day. I think when he's given the right material to work with, he can be really funny.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's Pacific Rim Uprising. And even as short as that review was, we talked about it longer than it deserved.
I know we do this in the Facebook chat a lot, but you just gave me a good idea for a porno title for Pacific Rim Uprising.
Okay, go ahead.
Pacific Rim Job Rising Up Your
Sometimes those really on the nose ones are the funniest, though.
Yeah, I couldn't even finish it without laughing. I'm sorry, folks.
No, it reminds me of in the Norm Macdonald movie Dirty Work, Men in Black. Yeah. Who like to have sex with each other.
Who like to have sex with and then you hear the audio while the audience is watching, and they're like, "Yeah, we found an alien species. We better have sex with it." And
then later, hey, this alien looks really like a hot guy. Oh yeah, we better have sex with him.
Then the one of the projectionists, like his friend, looks over at it quickly, and then he takes his tape recorder out, and he's like, "Note to self: my friend just took a look at the movie."
Right. Now, which the thing is that that joke is less funny now because the whole gay panic thing has become a problem.
Yeah, but I think the point is that it's a fucked up movie. It's not so much that it was a gay porno. It was that it was
Right.
just a fucked up porno, you know.
Well, that they're having sex with aliens, that's certainly odd.
That's it's very odd, yes. And the audience runs out and they're like, "Oh my god, that was sick." What's funny is they didn't even run out like in the first few minutes. They just kept watching in awe.
Yeah, there's the level of morbid curiosity, I think you could call it.
Yes. So the second movie that you want to talk about,
Ready Player One.
Yes, Ready Player One
Is, there.
It's there. Yeah, it's a movie.
It's definitely a Steven Spielberg movie, and it's also definitely one of the weaker films in his catalog. And here's the thing: it's not that the movie's bad per se; it's that the movie is a retread of the most generic Steven Spielberg kind of story that you can come up with.
Okay.
And because of that, it's just really not that interesting. Add to the fact that Ty Sheridan, who is an actor that's done some really good work in the past, just doesn't carry this movie in any way, which is too bad because he was great in Mud. He was great in Joe.
He was okay as Cyclops, I guess.
Well, as long as the movie is named after the main character.
Yeah. Okay.
So what I'm saying is, if his character was named Ready Player One, then maybe this would be a good movie.
Okay, because that's the trend.
Mud and Joe, right?
Yeah, right. Do you think part of that might be because most of the movie takes place within that game, that virtual reality system, and they have to kind of use motion capture, and maybe they didn't have a setting to act off of?
That doesn't bother me, and in fact, the special effects in the movie are impressive. I liked that stuff. In fact, most of the stuff that took place in that virtual world felt really unique, and I would have. I liked seeing what I saw of it, actually. And that's that. This is where it gets difficult because the problem isn't necessarily anything specific in the film being bad. The problem is so many things in the movie specifically being mediocre. And I liked a lot of what I saw in this movie, and I was entertained throughout. But even here, less than a week after viewing it, I'm having trouble recalling specific moments of the film that I found to be particularly compelling.
What about I guess this wasn't a compelling moment, but it was a very fun moment. That was when they entered The Shining.
That was cool. I enjoyed that.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's that.
I guess the only thing that I felt that was in the least compelling was the fact that company IOI was given the authority to collect people into a debtor's prison.
Yeah, they should have explored that earlier in the film. I think that would have made
a little bit more too, because we do see a bit of a point of view from one of the cells when the Olivia Cook's character gets caught up into it. She sacrifices herself for the good so the team can get away, and then she ends up in one of those little cells. But we don't really get, like we see a little bit of what the routine would be. Like you get 5-minute bathroom breaks, then you got to get back to work, and then you get electrocuted if you don't work, and stuff like that.
I'm see being into politics and stuff. I'm more interested in how they got the legal permission to do this.
Right.
So
maybe they don't have the legal permission. Maybe that's I bet they did have the legal permission, but
presumably they would have to. I mean, because that's
to round up all those people, they would have to have some kind of permission to do
Not only they're rounding them up, but they're doing it in broad daylight with a paramilitary force. You can't get away with that unless the government permits it.
Yes, absolutely. And the ending of the movie doesn't really resolve that. It resolves the two lead bad guys,
Hmm.
but only because they were conducting murder.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm going to go ahead and reiterate again. I said this when you were talking about it last week, but I'm going to reiterate that
Okay.
this shit's fucked up. The whole thing about like them deciding, all right, well we'll just close it 2 days of the week specifically. So what if your schedule is anything else, you can't do it.
And also considering this is a very important economic resource to the world, and a lot of people work within that virtual reality system.
Yeah.
Like not just in the debtor's prison, but just legitimately work in that world. You're closing it 2 days out of the week. That could cost people money. That
Oh
could
yeah.
fluctuate the stock market or something. That reverberates.
Yes. It's just a stupid way to come up with like a last minute like commentary where it's like, oh yeah, so just make sure to
To get some sun every once in a while.
yeah.
It was very that. Now I was talking about cheap earlier. That was cheap. Like I was like, oh, come on, Steven.
Yeah, in fact,
I got the message in the case of our main character Parzival. It was so he could make out with the girl Artemis
mhm.
and have a relationship, and it wasn't it was hinted at a little bit earlier in the movie that he was having the same problems that Halliday was having with women, in that he was spending too much of his time in his hobby when he should be out and about and dating girls and having relationships and having a life and stuff. And the more they end up in the chase for the Easter egg, the more they learn about Halliday and his fears and all that. And
Mhm.
it doesn't really. You kind of get a sense that they're connected in a way, but the movie ends with him like, oh, 2 days out of the week we just spend time smooching.
Yeah.
I was like, well, that's a little too blunt. Maybe you want to say spending time together. Doesn't have to be just simply sitting on a couch, gazing into each other's eyes and making out.
That's the time of the week that we fuck.
Well, okay, but that's conjugal visit. You're still in a prison, buddy. You know what I mean? Just because you get a visit every once in a while, don't make it a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
It's an unfortunate movie. It's a weird movie because just like you, I enjoyed a lot about it, but it was kind of depressing at the same time.
right. And not particularly memorable again. And everyone's mentioned this. The references, some of them feel interesting and unique, and some of them are just so hackneyed and dropped in. And from what I've heard, this movie is actually it's actually somewhat conservative compared to what the book does.
Oh no, definitely. That's totally true. I haven't read all of the book, but I've read passages from it, and it the way it handles references is so much like Twilight. How Twilight is written, not Twilight. I'm sorry. How 50 Shades of Grey is written. It's like it's clumsy and way too in your face.
Mm-hmm.
Like he'll just literally just copy and paste in things that have happened in history or pop culture. Like I don't know. He'll say like, so anyway, me Parzival is walking down. And I'm making it sound like it's worse than it really is by throwing in words that shouldn't be there, like me and is. But that's just to make it funny. Me, Parzival, is walking down the street and Chucky shows up. Then Donnie Darko, the rabbit from Donnie Darko, comes in. And then I'm looking at my DVD rack here. So
Yeah.
what else can I throw in? You know what I mean? Like it's some shit like that. And it's literally every page is nothing but that shit.
Yeah.
It's just, how do you turn this into a movie?
The movie is relatively conservative in that
Yes.
respect. I
Yes.
I have to credit it for that. By comparison, at least.
By comparison, yes.
All right. Well, that's all I got to say about that.
Ready Player One. More like Ready Player Don't.
Yeah, that didn't
Um,
work.
um,
I credit you for trying.
yeah. More like Not Ready. Not even Player One, just Not Ready.
I just can't wait for the sequel, Ready Player 2.
There actually is a book on the way called Ready Player Two.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm sure there is.
and I have no idea what the sequel would be
If
like.
it's half as good as Willy Wonka and the Great Glass Elevator, then
That was some crazy shit. That book.
yeah, that movie is
That
where it made
did that movie ever happen?
no,
Okay, like not even as an animated thing. It was just because
no.
I read the first half of the book, and then I had to return it. This was as a kid, and I remember thinking, "This is insane.
Yeah,
What's happening in this book? They're in space.
it's cracked out. It's just cracked out.
It's so cool.
There's
That's what Tim Burton should have done. If he had to make a Willy Wonka movie, just do that.
right. Well, it's like I just remember the one element in the book. It's been years since I read it, but there's one element in the book in which one of the Charlie's like other older relatives took this thing that's supposed to make her younger, and she took too many, and
Oh.
so she gets so young that she eventually becomes negative,
Yeah.
and so they have to go to this negative world. And the way they describe it is the people are kind of like shaped like minus signs, which is
Which is really insane. That's just like you think she would just turn into like a sperm or something, or an egg or whatever, or separate into those two.
well, I mean, eventually disappear into nothingness.
And then disappear into nothingness, right? Instead, it's like no, she becomes a negative.
Yeah,
It's like,
I mean,
well, it's a children's book. That she can't die; she has to turn into something else. So, but still, though, I mean, that's pretty funny, and yeah, I mean that would have solved the Tim Burton problem. Like Mr. Burton, we want you to remake Willy Wonka. Yeah, but can it be not that? You know what I mean? Like instead they were like, no, just do it over again, but Burton it up, and he's like, yeah, all right, whatever. That's his attitude. If only he had a little bit more chutzpah, he could have said, no, I want to do the sequel.
a little more chutzpah.
Yeah, I want to do the one where they're in space and everything's on meth.
Speaking of movies on meth, Blockers.
Is it really on meth? I don't know.
No, I was trying to segue and I couldn't think of a single way to make it.
If anything, Blockers is, I wouldn't call it bland or anything, but I most certainly would not say it's on meth. It's but at the same time, I wouldn't say it's safe either. It's raunchy in places, I guess.
It's a raunch comedy.
A raunch comedy, yes.
Here's the thing. It's a raunch comedy that tries to have a female perspective, is written by 5 men and directed by a female director who tries her best to make what she can out of a script that was written by 5 men about girls wanting to have sex, because
that's a good point to bring up, because
so
I think
painfully feels like a script written by dudes.
Yeah, I think everyone brings up the fact that it was directed by a woman, but not that it was written by several guys. Yeah, so that's an interesting point to bring up. In viewing it, and I had a unique viewing experience because WrestleMania was in town last weekend, and when I saw it last Friday, John Cena was sitting with us in the audience, and then he did a Q&A afterwards, which was pretty fun. And he was very gracious. He was signing autographs for like everybody that was coming up to him.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like he was sitting really close to me too. And there was like a huge crowd of people that just gathered in the seats, like up to him, like, hey, you mind signing this? And he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. So that was pretty cool. He was doing whatever he could, so that was very nice of him. But
and as it happens, that's also what he does in Blockers, everything he can.
Actually, yes. Blockers, he plays a kind of a sporty, he's a dad who relates to everything in sports terms, kind of.
He is your absolute stereotypical jock dad.
Jock dad, yes, and he has a daughter, but that's fine. I don't think he regrets having a daughter. In fact, he sees it as probably a challenge. Yeah, I'm gonna raise a daughter, and he raises her kind of like as a tomboy in a way, but she's also a girl. She's still just a girl and wants to do girlish things too. But he always refers to things in her life with like sports related things, like you gotta head for the play, coach. You gotta do this. You gotta do that. I don't know. Typically, you don't tell the coach to head for a play. Typically, the coach tells the player to do that. So I'm out of I'm out of the loop here when it comes to those kind of sports. But
I don't sport, so I have no idea.
Yeah, I have recently begun watching Major League Baseball Network because I have it on YouTube TV, and I don't know why I watch it. I think it's like the Weather Channel. You just put it on the background and just let it wash over you, while you sleep. But nonetheless, Blockers, I thought had a really good beginning. It was the three parents, John Cena, Leslie Mann, and who's the third one? Ian. Is that his name, Ian? Or he's from Mad TV, right?
Ian
Bromholder?
Kurt Braunohler.
Oh, okay, yes. He's kind of the raunchy one out of the three adults. The other two are more straight laced. The Leslie Mann's kind of like the motherly single mother. John Cena's like the jock dad, but he's also very by the book. What I mean?
And by the way, that's not him at all. His name is Ike Barinholtz.
Ike Barinholtz. That's it. Okay, yeah. I knew it was like Ian or Ike or something. But the beginning of the movie sees them introducing their kids on their first day of school to each other. And they're meeting up and everything, and the parents are meeting up, and they're like, "Hey, should we get a drink?" And the two other parents are like, "Well, whatever. Let's just talk about the kids and stuff, and annoy and not listen to this guy."
Yeah, they completely ignore him, and it's setting a total pattern for the rest of the movie, in that they continually
because they know that this guy is probably full of crap,
Which, as it turns out, he's probably the most real person in the movie.
Right, he ends up being the one with the best answers to the to the evening, anyways, and we see this really nice sequence set to a Dr. Dog song, where it's like a montage of the kids growing up and the parents being with them and everything, and then we cut to the day of prom, and that's when we start getting revelations as to where these kids are now. And, one's about to head off to college. One, all three of them have their own little things going on. And they eventually make a sex pact in the cafeteria at their school. They'll lose their virginities tonight. Let's put our hands in the middle.
Is very anxious at reminding you it's totally okay that they're doing this.
It is okay they're doing
which
that.
Is fine.
If they want to do that and bond over it, that's totally up to them.
Absolutely, and I have no problem with that. But what I'm saying is that the movie constantly reminds you of that. This is one of those movies that kind of makes me think of like, what was
the movie doesn't want you to take it in the wrong way at all. They're very paranoid.
Exactly. It's a movie that's trying to. If they had painted the word social responsibility on the wall, it wouldn't have been more obvious.
Yeah, it is kind of like that. So the parents find out through not accidentally, but they stumble upon the chat window in the friend's computer, which I didn't even know that there are chat agents that you can do on your phone, but will also appear on your computer.
I found that out by accident, actually, because I installed an update on my phone recently, and for a while, every time I got a phone call, FaceTime would show up on my fucking computer, and it would annoy the shit out of me.
That's why I have an Android, folks.
Yeah, and I figured out that that Apple and my MacBook and my iPhone, work in conjunction. Yeah, they work in conjunction with each other, and unless you disable that setting, it's going to annoy the crap out of you.
So maybe that's it. Maybe that's what happened. She just forgot to close her screen or something. But
and she.
So they see it and they joke around about the emojis that they're using, and they're like, "What does that mean?" Cena's plays. I want to say this about Cena's performance. He is a very clueless dad in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Most of his comedy comes from circumstance. Like at one point he has to do this, at one point he's forced to do that, and he's very I don't want to call him a conservative, but he's his character, but
Naive.
naive, maybe a little repressed,
Yeah.
possibly. Not terribly so, but enough to where he's anxious and nervous around certain situations.
So here's the biggest problem that is faced by the daughters, the three daughters in this movie,
Their
is that
parents.
they are 21st century daughters with parents who have a 90s sex comedy parent attitude.
Yeah.
It's
Which is
very.
kind of brought up in one scene when they're trying to get the address to the lake house where
Mhm.
they know their kids are going to be at. And they have to go into Cena's wife's office. And Cena's wife is there, and she's like, "What the hell are you guys doing? This is the 21st century. If these kids want to explore sexuality, let them explore it."
Right.
And they're like, "Well, fuck that noise. We're just going to go over there anyways."
Right. And the whole thing about this is that the parents are the craziest motherfuckers in this movie. The kids are taking things from a much more adult perspective, and they know their limitations fairly well. And so it really, I mean, I don't think it's. I doubt you'll disagree with me, Bill, when I say that the most adult people in this movie are the kids.
Yeah, I would say that, like you said earlier about Ike, what's his last name? Brumholtz?
Barinholtz.
Barinholtz. I want to say Brumholtz. I don't know why.
I mentioned Kurt Brunel earlier because
That's probably it. Well, anyway, what's his last name again? Barinholtz? I
Barinholtz.
got it right. Okay, great.
Say it 10 times in your head.
He does play he's the goofy dad, the drunk party dad, that kind of character. Although he's not always drunk, he's just always like, yeah, you guys want to party? You want to get into the spirit? That kind of dad. But at the same time, he's the one trying to stop the two other parents for the majority of the movie because he wants his daughter to have a good time. And he also knows his daughter better than anyone.
Right. Seriously, he knows him better because he's been able to interpret that his daughter is gay before even really she fully understands that.
Right. And he's like, look, I don't want her doing something or I don't want her involved in something that you guys are going to ruin. And then later in the movie, when he sees and finds out that her date, Chad with the fedora, who he calls like a very cool guy. And I think at first I thought he was genuine about it, but I think later it's revealed that he was just saying that around her just so that she would feel better. When it's revealed that Chad is in fact planning on spending the evening with her sexually, and he knows that she's gay. He's like, okay, I gotta stop this too because she's gonna make a move that she's probably not interested in.
Right. And do something that she'll regret in from a much deeper way, really. And he's wrong for believing what he believes in this case, but it's coming from, unlike the other parents in this film.
Yeah.
There's at least a coherent reasoning behind it, I would argue.
The other two are more worried about losing their daughters in terms of losing them to maturity.
Right.
Which is illogical because, of course, they're going to mature. They're kids growing into adults. That's how life works.
Right.
You age. And
so let's address the fact that, this movie, like, doesn't this movie pretty much follow the formula of the American Pie movies in terms of its... I mean,
in a way, in terms of that it has raunchy moments mixed with heavy sentimentality,
and not only, I mean, and the raunch elements in it they just feel forced to me.
I wouldn't say forced. I would say believe it or not, I would say they're more safe than anything, and that's saying something considering that there's a sequence in the movie that you would think it would be the opposite of safe.
The butt chug scene.
No, not the butt chug scene. That was safe to me. That was like, they actually, and I thought they played that up rather well. In the trailer, I was looking at Cena's face, and he was just giving goofball looks, and I was like, okay, Cena, you're not doing a good job here. But then in the movie, when they actually cut it together, and this is the final version, I bought it. I was like, oh, he's actually getting beer up his ass.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I actually thought it was funny. And I wasn't just laughing because Cena was there in the crowd. I actually was genuinely laughing at that. But there's a sequence where what's the actor's name? He's the dad of one of the boyfriend of Leslie Mann's daughter, Gary Ross, Gary
Cole.
Gary Cole, that's his name. Gary Cole and who's the other actress? His wife, Gina Gershon.
Yes,
they play parents who screw all the time,
and publicly,
and publicly and boisterously screw all the time, and they have a very open relationship with their son. Not open sexually, I mean open like he's allowed to tell him things, you know.
And because they tell him everything.
Because they tell him everything, and the other parents find that weird. But there's a sequence in the movie where they have to get information from that house, and they go there, and Cena and Ike Barinholtz are in the house, and they're trying to be quiet, and the two other parents, Gary Cole and Gina Gershon, are naked, specifically Gary Cole, and they're playing like a game of like hide and go seek, but it's like hide and go fuck or something.
Yeah,
and we see Gary Cole.
They're trying to locate each other by their musk.
Yeah, right, and that was disgusting, and their musk, you know, and we see what I was like, they really had to cut it in a certain way, like with the shadows, because it was taking place in the dark and everything.
Gary Cole, graduate of Illinois State University. Go Redbirds!
There you go. And there's a moment where they have to like touch his cock and balls because that's the game the guys that the wife is playing, and they have to match it move for move, otherwise they'll know that they're in the room with them. And I thought to myself, how did this make it into the movie?
Yeah.
You know, and believe it or not, I felt that was a safe scene. They weren't playing it up for all the wrong that it was, or all the craziness that it was. They were actually playing it kind of, we've said this word multiple times for this movie, but conservatively. They were playing it literally as base as they could, without adding any more spice to it. This is Blockers.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I don't have much else to say about this movie, so I'm gonna go ahead and sum up that there was enough in Blockers to recommend it as like a streaming rental for me. It had some genuinely funny moments in it, but overall, it didn't feel original enough or creative enough in what it was trying to accomplish. For me to give it more than just a very tacit recommendation.
I liked the storyline that was specific to the daughters. I liked their situation whenever we cut to them and we just see their night progressing. And I liked their performances too. I thought, like you said before, it was very adult.
I actually would have liked if the film focused much more on the daughters and that the parents was like a subplot rather than the main plot.
Rather than the forefront, right?
Right. The only reason it was forefront is because they had
name recognition. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's counterproductive to what I think would have made the movie more original and interesting, because the fact is there aren't that many creative, well-written sex comedies involving girls, and that's, as the protagonist, that is.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would give if I had to give this a rating on the Movie Boozer scale, it'd probably be 3 beers and a shot. It's not a bad movie or anything, but it's like what you said. It's a streaming recommendation. It's it had John Cena not been in the audience and not done a Q&A at my screening, I probably would not have seen it in the theater. I probably would have waited for it to hit Hulu or something.
I'm being honest here. The only reason I saw this movie is because the showing of Isle of Dogs I was trying to go to was sold out, and
So you're like, I gotta do something.
yeah, and this was the only movie that was playing at the time, and so it just happened to be, like as soon as Blockers ended, the next Isle of Dogs movie was gonna showing was gonna be playing. So I was like, okay, well maybe, yeah, but yeah, so passable recommendation.
Passable. You could spend your time doing something worse.
Yeah, there's a lot of worse movies out there, and
is that a segue?
no, actually, oddly enough, the movie I'm going to mention right now is not. It's also not great because we're gonna talk Chappaquiddick, and I'm gonna be quick here because this movie,
Because it's kind of bland, isn't it? I haven't seen it, but it kind of comes off like it's like maybe it's interesting by conceit of
dealing basic.
By dealing with this particular subject matter, but not because it adds anything to it.
Here's how this movie rates in what I like to call the 90s HBO TV movie scale.
Well, there were some good HBO TV movies. The Late Shift, the Second Civil War.
Yeah, those are
Pentagon
interesting.
Wars. Yeah,
Tuskegee Airmen is
probably the best one.
Yeah, people who tell you, that Red Tails is, tells important history. It does, but you know what does it better? A movie that came over a decade before that and also starred Cuba Gooding Jr. Oddly enough.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, my point being that Chappaquiddick tells the history of the Chappaquiddick incident very respectfully and plainly, without anything, any attempts to rise above the essentially, the what we already know. There isn't much that it has to say, really. It's just reporting what happened, and you could argue there have been arguments made that the movie is vaguely anti-Kennedy, and I would say it's blatantly anti-Ted Kennedy, but that's because Ted Kennedy was kind of a dick. And in fact, the Kennedys in general, Bobby was probably the only one who got away scot-free from history in terms of how he's revered. But this is how I'm going to finish. I'm going to say this is a movie with a solid cast of actors reenacting this film, and a director who just made the movie very respectably, and that's kind of it.
It's one of the trailers I saw for this, just to kind of briefly cut in for a second, or TV commercials or whatever you want to call it, for this kind of painted Ted as like a sociopath.
Yeah, the movie does that too.
The way it was cut together, it was like there was a shot where he's watching the moon landing, and his face is just like the only one in the room, and his face is just completely frozen.
So I'm not going to go sociopath so much as
drunk jerk. I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
So this is what happens. So the at the beginning of the movie, they show him off as being a very idealistic person, and the moment that something bad happens, you see that look on his face that you see on so many people, where he's, he has a moment of regret for what he did, but his regret for what he did is less about who he did it to and more about the fact that he fucked up. It's all about him. And that's kind of what the movie tries to hammer home, is the selfishness, essentially, of everything he was doing, because everything he was doing was to protect himself. The reason why he went something like 9 hours or I think even longer, I think like 18 hours before he actually reported the fact that he was in a violent accident.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's fucked up.
Well, my mom, she's or was an advocate for people with disabilities, and she would frequently go to D.C. And when Ted Kennedy was still alive as a senator, she actually met with him on a couple of occasions, and even got to take a picture with him and stuff. And she always tells me she regretted not bringing her mother along, my grandmother, or at the very least getting an autograph for her, because my grandmother was a big fan of the Kennedys and everything.
Right.
But I remember when she told that story, I was like, yeah, but didn't he do something very bad once?
So the one thing the movie does to try to give to apologize a little bit for, or not to apologize, but rather to say that he really couldn't help being a dick, is that it does what every Kennedy biopic does. It shows Joe Kennedy, their father. Bruce Dern plays the father, and at the point when the Chappaquiddick incident happened, he had suffered a stroke, and he was mentally he was pretty there, but he couldn't communicate very well. He could barely move around in his home. And there is this scene in the movie that kind of made me smile more than anything, because it's just comically evil. Is he's talking to his dad and, saying, what can I do? And his dad, the only word he can squeak out of his stroke-ridden voice is alibi.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's Bruce Dern, man.
And he says it like 5 or 6 times. Alibi. And
Ted Kennedy's just like, what?
Right. Well, the thing is, the movie makes it plain that Ted Kennedy had numerous instances in which he could have he could have sacrificed his political career in favor of doing the right thing, and and standing down from his position and admitting that he screwed up, and he could have even potentially saved. It's one of those things where it's like he sold his soul for continuing on in politics, and that's what the movie tries to hammer home. And to an extent, I would say, yeah, Ted Kennedy did a lot of good as a politician, but as a person, that kind of behavior, then an incident like that happened, that's a test of your real life character in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is not a Republican Democrat thing. This is a human thing.
Yeah.
Never forget Ted Kennedy's longtime counterpart in politics, political nemesis, so to speak, Newt Gingrich, left his wife while his wife was dying of cancer.
Yes, yes. My mom had attended many lectures or speeches by Newt Gingrich, because we lived in Georgia for a while, and she was always like, I'm going to attend every single one of those motherfuckers, and I'm going to ask him, why he's a dick and all that stuff, And of course, he would always try to avoid that kind of stuff. But
hello, Mr. Gingrich.
Why are you a dick so much? But no, I mean, we had boot Newt buttons all over the house.
Mm-hmm.
We had, I mean, just anytime Newt Gingrich's name would come up, we were like, I especially was like, oh yeah, that's the asshole my mom talks about a lot.
Yeah,
it was like one of those things, and they would bring up, all the time his affairs.
I'm gonna give Newt Gingrich credit for one single solitary thing.
He wrote a book once.
Actually, yes. He co-wrote a series of Civil War novels that presupposed what would happen if the Confederacy actually won at Gettysburg.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: I read one of them called Grant Comes North that takes place after the events of it, and it's a really well written story that quite believably explains that the South still would have lost Gettysburg, or not Gettysburg, the war. And it's it's the thing is, because he's co-writer and not the lead, I just get the feeling that he probably put his name on it and may have come up with some ideas and probably didn't do the actual writing part.
The heavy lifting, yeah.
And that's, admittedly, this is part of my bias that I probably would believe it maybe a little more if he wasn't such a turd, but
right.
Maybe the part he wrote was, "What if the racist won?"
well, that's the thing. Well, yeah, he wrote that part, and then then the other author was like, that's horrible, and I want to actually sell books, so I'm gonna still have the North.
Well, hey, the Game of Thrones people want to make it into a fucking TV series, so
Yeah.
That idea, I mean, not the book series, but
not that specific. The thing is, in the book, it makes it plain that even if the Confederates won at Gettysburg, the North still would have triumphed.
Yeah.
So it's not the same thing as like CSA, where
right, yeah,
yeah,
Confederate States of America.
What I'm saying is, we're not going to be getting things like the Gold Dust Twins. Oh wait, that actually exists. That's the thing about that movie, is it pulls a rug under your I
remember
really.
I remember seeing Newt Gingrich being interviewed on History Channel or something for a Star Wars 1 hour special about history's greatest villains, how they compare to Darth Vader and the Emperor. And I was like, this is such bullshit.
Oh yeah, the History
Channel
coming
from Newt specifically, but also coming from the History Channel.
The History Channel lost its fucking soul years ago. I loved what they used to do, and it's when they started. Here's the thing: the end was near in the early 2000s when they started making documentaries that had full scale reenactment sequences. But at least those films, those things still had history in them. Now they're basically just let's fictionalize history and make it as action, and let's make sure that each one is filmed like whatever action movie is popular right now.
Zack Snyder's, Hatfields and McCoys.
Yeah.
I know.
So Chappaquiddick, I would say
back to this movie that no one cares about.
Yeah, exactly. I would say, unless you are really interested in seeing the events of this film reenacted, there's no freaking point. It's
all right.
Yeah.
I'm not, and I won't. So
I would just recommend go watch LBJ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, don't watch LBJ. There are 3 better films about Lyndon Johnson than.
Oh yeah, go watch Selma. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say. Shit.
Although I did enjoy LBJ for Woody Harrelson's performance, I thought that was very good.
Yeah, his performance was good, but he was played better by Bryan Cranston.
Yeah, okay.
Even better, I would argue, by Michael Gambon.
Yeah.
But and less cliche, because every LBJ movie has to have LBJ being vulgar and gross, and that's
Liev Schreiber did a good one in The Butler, where he's just sitting on the toilet taking a shit, and well, obviously that's what you do on a toilet, but he's like, "Give me the prune juice."
He was known for talking quite often about how well endowed he was, and he was, which if he would be, it would be a real problem if he wasn't also completely willing to back it up, because there are numerous people who've reported seeing his dick because LBJ would show it to people.
That's just, that would not fly today.
No,
whatsoever.
It would not. He would not.
That shouldn't have flown back then either, but it did for some reason. For some people, like, I don't know why, but whatever,
He got away with it because president.
Oh, right. He got away with it because he had a lot swinging around.
Yes, he had a lot of dick swinging.
A lot of dick power.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put my dick on the table and like
here's my negotiation.
There's my negotiation. What you got?
I'm just gonna hit the table with my meat gavel.
Oh God. When I go golfing, I don't need a club.
I just spin my hips a little bit.
Spin my hips a little. You guys remember basketball? That scene where they're naked in the dressing room and the locker room, and what's his face? The Robert Vaughn comes in to blackmail them, and you see whenever they swing their hips, their dicks are like so fucking long.
Yeah.
And but they're like oddly colored and everything, but you'd see him for a quick shot, and Robert Vaughn would look completely shocked, like, "Oh, that almost came at my face."
Right. All right. So speaking of something that almost came at my face.
Oh no.
I actually have nothing to. Yeah.
That's not a good. Yeah.
So tell us about Thoroughbreds.
That's even worse segue because it's a movie about teenage girls. And
Right.
Oh, God.
So it's been a couple weeks since I saw Thoroughbreds, but it's still my favorite movie out of the year so far.
Really?
It's got Olivia Cooke and Anya Taylor-Joy, and I'll see anything with Anya Taylor-Joy because she's one of my favorite actresses working right now. This is a movie about these two girls that they were kind of torn. They were kind of split apart from a few years ago when something really bad happened. Olivia Cooke's character put her horse down in a very violent way, and now she considers herself a sociopath. And she is hired, or I'm sorry, Anya Taylor-Joy's character is hired by the other girl's mom. Let me get the character's name so I don't have to say their whole names. To be her tutor, and Olivia Cooke's character. I'll pull her name up here in a second because again, it's been a couple of weeks. Amanda. Olivia Cooke is Amanda, and Anya Taylor-Joy is Lily. Amanda's mom hires Lily to tutor Amanda, and so they kind of come back together. And at first, there's a lot of tension because they know it's a business transaction. And Lily acts very, sweet and innocent, and Amanda acts very cold and disinterested because she's a sociopath. Mm-hmm. And then it is established that Lily's stepfather is a huge dick, and they hate each other. So the great thing about this movie is that these two characters, the more they talk to each other and discuss things, the more it's revealed that the way they pitched themselves to each other when they first are reunited is not exactly indicative of who they truly are. Amanda maybe isn't quite as blank and cold as she might act, and Lily is definitely not as innocent and sweet as she acts. And so the more that these girls talk to each other, the more they're able to reveal more of themselves to each other in their friendship. And then Amanda suggests that they murder Lily's stepfather.
Oh.
And Lily's initially not very excited about this, and then she starts to think about it. And there's not much more I need to talk about with the plot because a lot of the excitement of this movie is really seeing how these girls evolve and talk to each other. And, Ken, a few weeks ago, you asked me if this is anything like Mean Girls because the trailer kind of seemed to suggest that. And I would say maybe the only way this is like Mean Girls is if the two biggest pieces of shit in that movie got expelled and completely unleashed to do whatever they wanted, and they're not even the bitchy hip girls either. These are like really nasty women, and the movie pulls no punches as it continues on. Like it gets very, very dark and very I don't want to say creepy, but the movie is not afraid of making these characters out to be very, very awful people, and not always in a very fun way. It's like they're not good people.
Oh my God.
What?
You didn't hear that?
Yeah, I heard a loud freaking scream.
Yeah, somebody just got home.
What? I heard a scream and a thud.
Yeah, he came in, screamed, and slammed the door.
Okay, all right. If that's how you guys roll, or whatever.
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
This has Anton Yelchin in his final film role.
Yeah.
Which is actually really hard to watch that because he plays a drug dealer named Tim, and nearly every scene he's in, he talks about how he's going to make it to the top. He's small time now, but he's got a plan. He's going to become big. He's going to rule the town soon.
Yeah.
And knowing that Anton Yelchin himself was on that kind of career trajectory as an actor was really, really bittersweet to watch it. I mean, it's a great performance. He's only in the movie for like maybe 20 minutes, but it was a great role. The other two things about the movie is it has a really strong visual flavor to it. It kind of evoked a little bit of Stanley Kubrick in the way it does a lot of tracking shots. Like it'll follow Lily through her mansion, just tracking behind her as she walks down a hallway, down the stairs, into her stepdad's office, back up the stairs, through another room, and it's all one fluid tracking shot that felt very inspired by Kubrick. And then the rest of it had shades of Yorgos Lanthimos, but kind of still had its own style as well. Like it's a good movie to look at. There's a scene where Lily and Amanda are in the garden, and Amanda is playing chess with herself on this giant stone chessboard that they have out in gardens and stuff. And somebody who is a chess historian actually noticed during the scene that Amanda is performing a specific maneuver in chess that is designed for the person performing the maneuver to appear that they are going to be on the losing side of things, but they're setting themselves up to be victorious in the game. What?
Typically, the Gambit.
I think it was the Gambit, yeah.
Well, I mean, Gambit is kind of a. There's multiple types of game. A Gambit, essentially, just to explain, is basically a move that is, well, a gamble. It's something that is, it's likely to cause you, it causes some potential damage to your own side, but if you're doing it for the right reasons, you can succeed in a big way.
Yes, and it's interesting that they did that in this scene because in the scene, Amanda is discussing how she put her horse down, which is actually quite violent when she lays out the details, and it kind of continues to play into how these two girls have a friendship, but also a bit of a push and pull as well. And this movie eventually devolves into you're just looking for some kind of humanity or kindness in the movie, and you finally get a little bit of it, but in a very strange and kind of fucked up way. And the finale is absolutely fantastic. It's a little minimalist, but the way that the movie does it, I absolutely loved. And then it goes into the epilogue, which really cemented things as the way these characters act and who they are. And again, I'm being intentionally vague because a huge part of what makes this movie so satisfying is seeing how it all unfolds with these characters. It's not really anything huge or momentous, but it's these two characters in their own little pocket of where they're at and how they interact with each other, and it's absolutely brilliant.
Does it address sociopathy in a similar way to, like, in I Am Not a Serial Killer? The kid in that movie is, first of all, have you even seen it? Before I even continue,
I still haven't gotten to see it yet.
Okay, shit. All right. Well, in that movie, the lead character, the kid, is a diagnosed sociopath, and they make it clear that not all sociopaths are evil people. They just have their understanding of emotion is not there. They don't get the logic of why people feel emotional about things. They don't.
There's a couple of lines in regard to that in this movie. First of all, Amanda says that she said when she says she's a sociopath, she says, "It doesn't make me evil. It just means I have to work a lot harder than most people to be nice."
You know what? That's almost weird, word for word, like a line in "I'm Not a Serial Killer." Oddly enough,
well, it's probably an actual line from somebody who was a self-described sociopath, and the reason I think that is because Amanda, as far as I'm concerned, and this isn't really a spoiler, as far as I'm concerned, I think she's kind of a piece of shit that uses sociopathy as an explanation for that. It's her excuse.
Okay.
But I think also she is kind of maybe has some sociopathic tendencies as well, because she describes something called the method, and it's when you pretend to cry when you want to look emotional but don't actually feel anything. And she describes the method and how you think of something and you build a lump in your throat and start to swallow it, but then don't, and then let the tears come naturally. And so she lays out this entire way on how to pretend like you're crying. To trick people into thinking that you're emotional.
That's interesting. In I'm Not a Serial Killer, his method for being somewhat normal, he has rules that he's developed for himself, and the rules are specifically set up so he doesn't become a murderous sociopath. like one of his rules that he has set up is, if someone insults you, compliment them back.
Yeah,
and there's this awesome scene in the movie at like a Halloween party where he's explaining his rules to this bully who is messing around with him, and he basically tells the bully, it's things like this that normally I look at someone like you and I see you as kind of a piece of meat. I wouldn't have any problem, just stuff like that. And you learn later in the movie that the kid, like, after having that conversation with the bully like sought therapy because he was just frightened. So yeah, what I'm saying is see that movie, and I'm sorry I didn't.
I want to see it. Trust me, and I still got to get around to it. I just got so much else to watch.
Yeah, I know, but it's got Christopher Lloyd. It's so good.
I know.
Okay, so keep talking about it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail.
No, that's fine. Two other things in this movie, really quick, is the performances are really great. I've only ever seen Olivia Cooke in The Quiet Ones.
Mm-hmm.
That shit-ass paranormal movie from a few years ago about the students and the
She was also in Ouija.
What?
Oh, wonderful.
And
the original Ouija?
The original Ouija, and she was in another movie, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, which was kind of a bad movie, but still she was in it, and she was
Which
good.
is weird. She's only been in bad movies for the most part. And then Thoroughbreds is my favorite movie of the year so far because she is so good. And I'm excited because all it took was a really good director, almost a first-time director, Corey Finley.
I don't see any of their films to his credit.
Yeah, I think he's done like a couple other small projects, but this is his feature debut.
I think he was a playwright, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. And the movie does. I believe this movie was actually written for the stage, and somebody convinced him to make a movie instead. And it's kind of got that stage feel to it because the movie is blocked somewhat in the way that a stage production might be. But I'm also very happy that it's a film because A, we get some really good cinematography, and B, we get an absolutely killer soundtrack, which is, if you recall the trailer for Mother with the creepy plucking strings and the rising violins, the soundtrack to Thoroughbreds is not dissimilar to that. It's just not as aggressive, but it's got kind of this tense, plucky string thing that feels like it's just kind of like tickling at your nerves a little bit. Not that it's creepy, but it kind of, there's a reason to be uneasy.
Right.
And then, of course, Anya Taylor-Joy, with her big eyes and everything, like, I've never been simultaneously attracted and intimidated by an actress in recent memory. So that's my take on Thoroughbreds. I'm ready for it to come out on Amazon, and I will be purchasing it when it does.
So give us another hot take, this time on Acrimony.
Oh man,
Tyler Perry.
I don't know if it's so much the hot take as a predictable take. A take that we all know.
Was this a Tyler Perry directed movie, or it's just?
Oh yeah.
This is Tyler Perry's Acrimony, directed and wrote
that shit.
Okay.
And it shows. Now, first, I just want to get one thing out of the way. Is somebody pointed this out in a review. Apparently, he didn't get shooting permits for outdoor scenes in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Because that has some of the most heinous green screen I have seen outside of an asylum film.
Yeah, there's a ton of shitty green screen.
It's like there's a part where they're talking in a park and they're sitting on a bench. And it's very obvious that they are sitting on a bench in front of a green screen because it is blurry behind them.
Yeah,
it's so bad.
It's kind of like the roof in The Room.
It's worse than that.
Okay,
it's far worse than that because at least they're on a roof with like a somewhat of a background, like the door he comes out of.
Yeah,
but no, this is them sitting on a bench with a full green screen. It's not even a face shot. It is a full shot of their entire bodies on the bench with a clear green. It looks like a fucking photo studio behind them. So anyway, Acrimony is about a girl who marries this guy, and she supports him because he's building a self-charging battery, which already sounds fucking stupid. And it's his invention. It's gonna change the world and cure hunger and shit like that.
It's gonna cure hunger.
I'm just saying he didn't say that, but he has this delusion of grandeur along those same lines.
For it. Yeah, okay.
So she supports him through all of this, pays his bills, all this stuff, and then he cheats on her once, and she rams her car into his trailer and knocks it over. So I don't know. Maybe if I was him, I would have stopped the relationship right there.
There's an old adage which is "Don't stick your dick in crazy."
Yes,
that's a pretty that's right.
One of the things that I knew this movie would be hilariously bad is the old you know how someone is having sex is when you look through a window and they press their hand against it.
Oh God!
Like you see a window and someone presses their hand against the window. It's like, well, they're having sex in there because she put her hand against the window.
That's called pulling a Titanic.
Yeah. And anyway, they get back together. She forgives him, and they go on with life. And then he still has to get supported by her. His battery still isn't going anywhere. He still is not getting a job.
And she's come into a small inheritance, and so she's rather than looking for work, she's bankrolling his entire life with the inheritance.
Yes.
Ooh. She's got reason to be mad.
Yes.
Well,
there's not a lot that really matters up until the part where she thinks that he cheated on her again, even though he didn't, and she demands a divorce. And this is kind of a twist, but this is the most interesting part of the story. Is that she's like, no, I want a divorce. I'm never talking to you again. And then, like, literally, I don't know, like a week later, he gets a check for $10 million because his battery's rights get purchased by a company he's been campaigning for his entire life.
Oh, he doesn't just get a check for $10 million. He gets like hundreds of $1 million, and he gives her, even though the divorce is final, he gives her a check for $10 million.
Oh, okay. So here's the thing: is that this movie is so badly shot, is that when there's a close up of the check, I couldn't read what the number was. I just assumed it was the check I assumed that he just gave her the initial check, and he would held on to the remaining whatever he got paid.
Oh no,
this was the money that he owed her over the years of the.
He owed her like I don't know, $1.5 million.
A little over $1 million. She was keeping tally.
Yeah, it was like 1.3 million, because every time that she has to pay for something, there's this little like rolling number thing, like on a slot machine, like and then that show like Ken said, she's got a running tally of how much.
Wait, this is like a graphic that would appear on screen.
Yes.
So money factors heavily into this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, money.
Then why do they?
It's more jealousy than anything.
It's basically like she's building ammunition for hating him.
Oh,
right.
Okay, I see.
It's not really like money doesn't really factor in anything, because right when she's almost out of money, she remortgages the house, and when she loses the house, he buys it back for her. So that's what he does. He gives her a check for $10 million.
And buys the house back for her.
And rebuys the house that she lost because he fucked up when he tried once to get a job.
Final, and technically, he doesn't owe her a goddamn cent. And
exactly, because he did not ask for anything in the divorce. He gave her all of it because he felt so guilty.
He felt guilty because he did, for a long time, rely on her almost exclusively for his money. And that's... I understand that, and he did the right thing giving her the check. This is just a perfect example of Tyler Perry's strange, like his strange anti-feminist bent, where it's like the women in his movies are always heinous.
Yes,
just horrible.
Except for Diary of a Mad Black Woman, which even in the title still kind of implies that she's a little bit crazy for hating the man that abused her.
Okay, so one movie.
Yeah, out of what, 19? No, wait, no, he didn't even direct that one. He directed 19 and wrote like even more.
There was Good Deeds, which showed a guy, like a man who was like who was wealthy, and he was doing well, and he was doing good things for the women in his life, but the women in his life were not being mean to him or evil in any way, shape, or form.
But he was still better than those women for doing good things for them.
Yes, he was still he was still higher up. Yes,
which is it's very strange. Tyler Perry seems to have serious problems with both women and marriage. Mm-hmm. So anyway, the husband is like, "Here's $10 million. Here's some flowers. I bought your mom's house. I'm really, really sorry." But before he does this, she's like, "Before you say anything, we're never getting back together." And then, of course, he gives her the money, and then her eyes do not really, but metaphorically, her eyes do that cartoon thing where the eyes go and they turn into dollar signs.
And immediately, the next scene is her trying to bring the relationship back together.
Well, not only that, she goes home and says to her new boyfriend, fuck you, you're bad in bed and you're an asshole. And then she kicks all of her sisters out of the house because they're like, oh, you forced me to break up with him. You're horrible people. And then she finds out that her ex-husband has married or is engaged to, well, it's the woman he cheated on several years ago, cheated on her with several years ago, and the one who helped him get that contract with the company and made him so rich. No. So now she wants to get back together, and obviously they're engaged now. So this is the last half hour of the movie, and by far the best. And I maintain it's probably the funniest comedy Tyler Perry has ever produced.
Yeah.
To the point where if you go onto Fandango, this movie is actually classified as a comedy.
Oh, and it completely is.
And it totally is in the last half hour, whether or not it's intentional.
What happens?
I would argue there's a ton of funny stuff throughout the movie. This is incompetent to the extreme.
Well, the thing that I thought was so funny is that I know, Ken, you love to just laugh in the theater, but if it's a movie where somebody else is enjoying it and I'm near a door, I'll run out to the hallway and laugh just to not ruin their experience. But the couple next to me was into the movie, so
I should explain that my rule is very simple. If it's a movie like this, there is no rules. This is a movie that is just deserving of all of your spite.
You're gonna do a Cape Fear. You're gonna have a cigar. You're gonna just be laughing your ass off.
Now, it's no.
But the couple next to me
in the movie, but it is perfect excuse to laugh throughout it.
The couple next to me is really enjoying it, and if somebody really enjoys a Tyler Perry movie, what else are they enjoying? And do I want to take that away from them? I mean,
okay, so you're being generous.
Being generous. So she loses the house, right? And then she gets it back, and she starts drinking heavily, and like, okay, first of all, she's drinking heavily, and this previously furnished house, when she moves back in, all she brings in is a lamp, a mattress on the floor, a folding table and chair, and a laptop. And she uses this folding table to slash out the eyes in photographs of her ex-husband and his fiance. And then she sends hate mail over instant message to the new fiance under the pen name Pissed at Life 22. And there's this really gnarly montage where she's
why 22?
Because there were 22 other Pissed at Life people.
Yes, like, I guess Pissed at Life is taken. I guess they'll just add a number on there.
22, yeah, right.
And there's this really gnarly montage where she's like, I guess she's just like so trash. She's in the middle of her bed. I say bedroom, but it's the room the mattress is in on the floor.
Yeah.
Just like head banging and like stomping her feet and moving her fists. And it like, there's like several transition shots in the same shot in the same scene. So it's just basically blurry transition shots of her moving her position as she's like headbanging in the middle of the room.
It's the movie's Apocalypse Now drunken.
Yes, it was Apocalypse Now drunken rage.
I don't think there's a scene where she punches a glass mirror, but it could have been in this.
Might as well have done that.
You know, I don't remember it entirely, but I wouldn't be surprised.
So I'm curious. How does this movie end? How does it go from where does it go from here?
They climb aboard their luxury fuck yacht, and
the ex-husband and his fiance.
Yeah, the ex-husband and fiance, and she sneaks aboard and starts trying to murder them with an axe.
Wait, I want to backtrack really quick because it's the second funniest thing in the movie is the fiance, or I guess she's now married. She goes down into the boat to get, to take a bath or whatever, and then the main girl, Taraji P. Henson, she comes out with a gun and she forces the crew to jump overboard, and then this is such a comedic way to do this scene, but the crew starts jumping overboard, and then you get a shot of the fiance below, and then in the background through the window you hear "Wah!" this guy like falling out of frame. And she looks around like, what? She's like, what's going on? And then there's just like bodies jumping off behind her, and she's like looking around wondering what's going on.
That's like a Naked Gun gag.
It's a Naked Gun gag. But anyway, Ken, go ahead.
Yeah, so there's
they're on the fuck yacht.
They're on the fuck yacht, and she is she's basically she is murdering them with an axe, or trying to. Basically what happens is she very specifically wrangles her foot in such a way that that her foot happens to be like tangled up in chains, and it's very obvious that like Tyler Perry's direction was, all right, figure a way so your foot gets caught in the chain. And she's like, okay, that doesn't even make sense how the scene is blocked, but I'll put my foot there.
She steps around to the other side of him, so she's standing on the chain when she could have just as easily murdered him from where she was standing in the first place.
Yeah. And so he has the anchor drop, and it throws her overboard, and she drowns. Movie over.
Okay, like let's elaborate. She gets the anchor chain pulls her, and she gets dragged backwards, face down like a Muppet, through a hole in the side of the boat, and then sucked underwater, screaming and blowing bubbles out of her mouth, and then she dies.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And the final shot of the movie is the husband all bloody on the ground, and the crew gets up and they kind of crowd around him, and then the movie just fades to black.
So is he dead, or is he just? Like,
no, he's fine.
Well,
he's
not
his legs almost chopped off.
She shot him, and she took a chunk out of him with an axe. So
he's got a bullet in his chest, and his leg is like almost chopped off, but he's alive, unlike her.
So he's just there contemplating what just happened.
So can I just say that the thing that I think elevates this movie above any other Tyler Perry bad movie
elevates
it to an entertaining level.
Yeah.
This movie is rated R.
Yeah.
Oh.
So you get a couple of F words.
Oh yeah. That and just some really like messed up things that happen in it. And so, it's the you know what? Something we forgot to mention, Hawk, was the wraparound elements of this film, which is the fact that the movie is told episodically through the thesaurus.
Yeah. So every scene transition, you get a word, like whatever it is, and then you get like about 15 synonyms for that word that just appear.
Think about the subtitles in Clerks, but if Kevin Smith thought people were stupid and put definitions next to it. Yeah.
It's and Ken, you mentioned something too in regards to Tyler Perry's direction, and then I didn't really directly observe this when I watched it, even though I kind of noticed it. In terms of Tyler Perry's blocking, whenever there's more than like 3 characters on screen, they all just crowd the frame and in front of the camera, and you have no idea what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, they stand shoulder to shoulder like it's some sort of a I don't know. It's
like a fucking Maury thing where everybody's on stage at the same time, yelling at each other.
Yeah.
There's a scene where Henson's character and her ex-husband, they're like fighting on the lawn. It reminded me of the scene in Step Brothers.
Here's
fighting in front of the house.
Actually, come to think of it, it makes a lot of sense when you consider Tyler Perry. His origin as a director was as a playwright, and that form of blocking where everyone is facing in front, facing stage.
Yeah,
that's what it feels like. It feels like everyone's facing the stage.
All right. Well, 19 movies later, fuck your background. Direct a movie correctly.
Yeah.
That's what I say.
I would tend to agree with you on that.
But then we wouldn't get acrimony.
Yeah. Oh, it's just like one last thing. Is that about half the movie takes place with the 2 main characters as college students,
mm-hmm.
and it is startling how little they look like their adult counterparts. Like her younger version's sister looks more like Taraji P. Henson than the actual actress playing the younger version.
And what makes that doubly hilarious is the fact that the is the fact that there's this scene Tyler Perry has where in the scene the characters age, and it's supposed to be this sort of artsy thing where it's like, oh, they're transitioning, and now we can see what their older selves look like, but it's like they morph into a completely different human being.
Well, like she's like in the the mirror, she's like washing her face, and she wipes her face off. I was like, holy shit, this 19-year-old is now 45. And again, looks nothing like the characters look nothing like each other, so it was a very distracting transition.
Oh yeah. All right, well, that's all I gotta say about Acrimony.
Yeah, me too.
Tell us about The Endless.
Yes.
The Endless is a very good horror movie, and I say this with a certain trepidation when I heap praise on it, because this movie has two things which really, really speak to me as a person: is cults and cosmic horror. I studied a lot of cults and religion and that mentality in college.
I joined a lot of cults in college.
No, I didn't join any cults. Although it's I don't want to get too much into it, but the way that religion influences your psychology is not dissimilar to the way cults do the same thing. And this movie does a lot of that, and also cosmic horror is probably fucks me up more than anything else in terms of horror. No, so for those that don't know, cosmic horror, that was popularized by H.P. Lovecraft, refers to the type of horror that being of the unknown. That there is probably, or definitely, if you like to think of it that way, a world outside of our own through a tear in the universe that exists, an evil and these creatures so horrifying that you cannot possibly comprehend it.
Why is that a probably, by the way?
What do you mean?
You said that's probably how the world is. I mean, what evidence suggests that is my question.
Because that's a tenet of cosmic horror, is that we don't know that it exists, but it probably does, because.
But why does it probably exist?
That's just what they believe.
That's just what it is. I mean,
it's what it is. Yeah.
It's okay. I say probably because we can. If it does exist, it is so horrible we cannot imagine it in its magnitude. Does that make sense?
Well, let's wildly speculate anyways.
Yeah, I have no evidence to suggest that this exists, but it probably does.
Yeah, I don't know. I just pulled it out of my ass. I mean, whatever.
I'm sorry.
I'm not really describing it correctly, but
the way you describe it, I'm sorry. I don't mean to make.
Yeah, no, we're not trying to.
So kind of like I'll explain briefly. Like, think of it like this. You know, we live on Earth, and obviously, and I say obviously because that's my belief. Potentially, Earth is not the only source of life in the entire fucking universe, right?
Yeah, okay. I will buy that.
So it would then follow that apart from Earth and apart from the Milky Way galaxy and apart from our universe that we live in, there are other universes where other things exist. And in these universes, there may be something very evil there. And there may be a rift that allows that universe to get to ours if they're interested in doing so. And what lies on the other side of that rift is so horrifying that with our human minds, we have no idea how horrible it could be. We can picture a tentacle monster that's reaching through it like Guillermo del Toro likes to envision, but it doesn't have tentacles. It has something that we can't even imagine because it is that frightening.
It has testicles.
So, what?
Nothing.
He said testicles?
He said testicles, but I mean, that's something we could imagine. He's saying something we couldn't imagine.
That's the thing about cosmic horror, is the fear of the unknown. You do not know what's out there, and you cannot fathom what it is because it is too horrifying for you to even imagine.
Okay.
So that's, I know it's kind of like a wacky.
It's like Donald Rumsfeld saying. It's like Donald Rumsfeld saying, "There are known knowns and unknown unknowns."
Yeah.
It's again, like
we don't know that we don't know.
I don't truly believe that is the case, because when I say probably, but if it does exist, that is incredibly frightening to me. But anyway, this movie, The Endless, deals with one of those types of cults, and not quite in the way that I believe in it. So these two brothers who escaped from one of these cults 10 years ago, and now in the present time, well, I say the present time, but this movie doesn't really establish itself in a timeline. It has flip phones. There's not really any mention of the internet, so the timeline of this movie is a little bit nebulous, and that is made a little more clear later in the movie why that is. But it's 10 years later after they got away from this cult, and they get a video shipped to them about one of the ladies in the cult inviting them back. And so one of the brothers decides that he wants to see what's going on, like, because he didn't really leave the cult willingly. When he was there, he found that they were nice people, they ate good food, and he felt very welcomed there. So the two brothers decide to go back. The second brother does it more out of love for his brother and wanting both of them to have closure. So they go back there, and the first thing they find is that nobody seems to have aged at all since they last saw them 10 years ago, which puts them on edge a little bit. Everybody is still very, very friendly in the cult and welcomes them back very warmly. And they decide to spend a couple days there just to find that closure and see what was going on. And, you know, the cult still does their things and this weird stuff. And this is why I loved studying this stuff in college, because if you're in a religion and you're in a cult, you're only crazy. What?
You said if you're in a religion, you're in a cult, and I said yes.
If you're really in a religion or in a cult, or both.
Okay, go ahead.
You're only as crazy as an outside observer thinks you are, right?
Or you really are crazy.
Or you are crazy, but if you're in this cult, you are not crazy. You don't think you're crazy. Somebody who sees you in this cult thinks you're crazy.
Okay.
So there's this great kind of dichotomy between what you're watching is like, okay, these people are in a cult, and that's really weird. But then these people in the cult, they're friendly, they're welcoming, they love each other. They have no real leadership because they're all leaders. They coexist. They have an industry. They love each other, and they accept the brothers back after 10 years with literally open arms. And I think that's great because in how this movie builds unease. You feel like you should be frightened by what you're watching, but the characters in the cult seem so happy. There's nothing sinister about the cult initially, and they even reject the label of a cult. They're a community, is what they call themselves. Right. And then there comes this really creepy scene, and I'll start by saying that this movie was, I would guess, this movie was not even double-digit millions in terms of budget. So there's not really a lot. You don't see much of anything, and again, that plays into the Lovecraftian cosmic horror. Is the fear of the unknown. You know something is bad, but you can't see it and you can't fathom it. So there is this exercise the cult has called the struggle. And the leader, de facto leader of the cult, he talks about the struggle, and he picks up this rope, and the rope kind of like wraps off on the ground, off into the darkness. It's like the struggle, we have it every day, the struggle against vices, against drugs, and against a higher power. And all of a sudden, the source of the rope whips up into the black sky. So whatever he's pulling on with the rope is somewhere up in the sky with an orange moon a little bit off to the corner of the screen. So he's tugging against something that is not actually here. And then he pulls on it and something pulls back. And the cult treats this as this really fun team building exercise.
Okay.
I'd be like, what?
And the brothers having been in this cult, one of them was like, oh, that's just Smiling Dave on a ladder. And Smiling Dave, I don't know if it's Dave, it's Smiling something, but it's a guy that just jogs around the camp just smiling all the time, which is creepy in and of itself. So the brothers have their own lens of what this is, and they think that it's just kind of some kind of sham. But the way the soundtrack and the cinematography is done in this scene is really, really creepy. At least it was to me. And then you get a shot of this, one of the girls in the cult is sketching this picture of that same landscape, and there's a pair of like fangs or eyes or something in the sky in her drawing that's pulling on the rope. And so she has her own interpretation of what's pulling back on the rope, but it is something. And the cult always talks about it and the thing or whatever it is, and they're all in service to it. But again, when it comes to cult stuff, the way the movie portrays the cult is that they're all okay with it. So you have this kind of, you feel okay around the cult, but you also feel very uneasy because you have no idea what they're actually worshiping.
I see. Interesting.
And this is only in the first half hour of the movie.
Okay.
I will say there's no huge reveal or earth-shaking revelation. There is a reveal of sorts that is kind of great, and it plays in a little bit more of what the movie is showing us earlier on in the film. There's a lot of circular imagery, clocks, above images of campfires, things like that. But I think one of the biggest benefits of the film is how it doesn't show you any monsters. It just suggests those things to you, and it lets that anticipation, and it lets you. It sketches the outlines and lets your mind fill in the blanks.
All right. Yeah.
Again, it's a movie that I have to be intentionally vague about in terms of what eventually happens.
Right, because you're trying to. Well, I mean, obviously, you don't want to spoil it.
Right. And again, there's nothing huge, but it's how it all comes together. And again, I think I'm slightly biased towards the positives in this movie because, again, cosmic horror as well as cult psychology are two things that I have a lot of interest in. So that this spoke directly to me as things that I really like to watch. And so I don't think that maybe the scene of the struggle would creep everyone out as much as it did me, but I've watched it a couple times now, and I watched I think Slash Film had the scene up on their website, and I watched it again, and even with the soundtrack and watching it, it still gave me chills, just knowing that kind of thing might exist. But yeah, I really, really dug it.
Probably exists.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just. Yeah. No. Okay. I'm sold. I would definitely give this movie a watch then.
Yeah. One thing the last thing I will say is that there's a movie that these directors made earlier a few years ago. Their first film called Resolution. It stars two characters who lock themselves in a cabin, and one of them is trying to detox himself and go cold turkey on drugs. And then some like these apparently these supernatural forces they besiege them while they're in this cabin. These two characters actually appear in The Endless, which I was a little bit caught off guard for a second because I didn't really know who they were. I had to Google the movie review and figure out who they were. Like, oh, they're in that earlier movie Resolution. The Endless still functions as its own thing without having seen Resolution, but I feel like if I had seen Resolution, that scene would be a lot more effective with that context.
Okay.
So the directors are actually building their own micro-budget cinematic universe with this film now. So I think that's interesting to see what they're going to do next.
Cool. Yeah. No. I mean, I just don't know what else to say.
Yeah. There's not much else to say. I mean, it took a few hours for the movie to really gestate, but I think all things considered, this is one of my favorite horror movies of the year besides The Ritual.
Okay. Well, speaking of horror movies, why don't we talk about A Quiet Place?
Yeah.
All right. Who wants to?
I guess I'll start. Everyone knows what The Quiet Place is about, right? It's like monsters.
I was attempting to make a joke because of the silence.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
And I have placed a stop on the quietness.
Yes.
Yes. So I mean, we all know what it's about, right? It's the monsters that take over the world, and if you make a noise, they will get you.
Exactly.
So the only showtime that worked for me on this movie was the Dolby Atmos. Which is like a fucking $19 ticket.
Yeah.
And, there's always a little bit of... no matter how many times you see Dolby Atmos, there's always a little bit of sticker shock when you the guy tells you how much you owe.
But you're not bitter, right?
No. I mean, I am not disappointed at all that I saw this in Dolby Atmos. And Dolby Atmos, of course, has for every row of seats, there's the vertical line of speakers on the wall, as well as speakers in the seats, I think.
Yeah.
Was the theater a Regal?
AMC.
AMC, okay, because I know that both AMC and Regal have Atmos. So.
Yeah, and so every time a creature lands on the roof or roars, the entire fucking room shook, and that was a fucking awesome experience, and my eardrums hurt for like an hour after I saw the movie. I mean, of course, let's. So that's all I have to say on as far as that. But I think the biggest thing is when I first saw the trailer, I was like, "Oh, that looks interesting," and then I googled it. And it's like, "Oh, directed by John Krasinski,
Yeah.
him from The Office."
Yeah, his previous directorial movies were The Hollers, which was like a family domestic drama comedy, and what was the other movie he did?
Brief Interviews with Hideous Men.
Yes, those were his only two other directorial features. I think he's done some TV directing, like on The Office and stuff. But
yeah, he directed some of the season 8 episodes of The Office. I didn't see The Haulers, but I thought that Brief Interviews is pretty good.
Okay. Well, nonetheless, this seemed kind of like a shift, like from doing that kind of movie to this kind of movie, which is a little bit more of a not gimmicky, but it's a genre. It's a
genre flick, yeah.
It's totally a different thing.
One reviewer put it really well. He said that a lot of actors who have themselves in a role for a long period of time, like John in The Office, they try to run away from that typecast later on in their career. And with A Quiet Place, John Krasinski is sprinting.
Yeah,
which is funny because he does a lot of running in this movie.
Yeah,
but also
very quiet running.
Very quiet running because there's a lot of sand on the ground.
You might even say it's silent running.
Oof, wow.
I would say quiet running.
There's a movie called Silent.
Yes, running. I know why. Yeah, I got you.
So let's just get out of the way. This might be a spoiler review, right?
We could because I know there have been comparisons. Or not comparisons. There have been articles written about how this was almost a Cloverfield movie.
Yeah,
and then they quickly came out where the studio was like, "No, it's not."
Yeah, maybe they changed that after Cloverfield Paradox was like everyone was like, "Yeah, that was a bad idea."
No, it wasn't. I mean, you mean as far as the studio refuting it?
Well, or just the filmmakers refuting it, because...
Well, I mean, I think they said early on, like way early on, when the script was being written, they were considering making it part of the Cloverfield universe.
Which would have made sense, because if you see the movie, there are some relations, but the movie doesn't really take on like a global event picture. It's very localized, and it's very personal. You know what I mean? Like, it's very much about this family specifically. We don't know anything about what's happening outside of their area. We don't know really how this happened. We just see little news clippings of, on newspaper taped up on the wall or, on a table or something, or on the ground flapping in the wind. We don't really, and we barely get a glimpse of that. We don't see television news reports because they can't have TVs on.
There are a shitload. He has his crazy wall.
Right, he has his wall, but he's trying to figure out what to do. Right. He's trying to figure out how to save my family. And
my family.
Yes, like Harrison Ford. And,
yeah, exactly.
But in one of the trailers, they show Emily Blunt watching television monitors, which are blaring out news reports. Like, there are reports of these creatures. And of course, if you watch the movie, they can't do that. Because if they have any sound whatsoever at a certain pitch, or volume, these monsters are going to come and get you, no matter where you are. Even if you're in a bunker, they'll come and get you.
And I would say the movie's fairly consistent in terms of noises.
Very consistent. That was surprising.
Yeah, it must be very difficult to get that. What I like about this. The apocalyptic world that it's set in is it's not a we're all alone apocalypse. It's an apocalypse where people are slowly dying out, but there are the survivors who figured out how to at least somewhat survive it. And every night he lights this big fire, like a signal fire, and we
see other flames in the air.
Oh, I love that.
That was a good scene. Yeah,
that was a brilliant touch.
Because there were two things going on in that scene. One, he was trying to kind of communicate with outsiders. But another thing, he was doing something very personal to him. It was an anniversary. And I won't give away because that involves the opening sequence. But it was like he was, at the same time, while we're seeing these other flames light up, knowing that there are other people out there, we also get this thought in our head, like, what's going on with them? What are they going through right now? How are they surviving? You know,
And it was also very reassuring to know that he wasn't alone. You know, that everybody there's this one of the big things about horror films is that feeling of isolation and being alone and being the sole survivor of the situation that you're in, and seeing that the other people are still alive. Then you have them in their own little pockets of their survival. And you kind of feel emboldened by knowing that you're not the only one going through this.
yes,
Right. And when you finally do see what has happened to, you know, the other people who are surviving, or you get a glimpse of what's happening to at least one other person who's surviving, that's when things really start to get dark, because you realize how serious things have gotten.
I'd say things get dark from the get-go. I mean, it's just it gets darker considerably as the movie.
I mean, let's go ahead and go with it. I mean, this isn't really a spoiler, but
yeah, it is in the trailer. Yeah, okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, kid gets killed.
You know what?
His youngest son gets
in the opening scene.
Yeah.
Yes,
I actually didn't know that was going to happen.
Yeah, me neither. I knew that he was going to race to save him. Right. I didn't know the kid was going to die.
Oh yeah,
I thought maybe he was going to get him right at the last moment. Yeah.
By no means did I know that it was going to happen either. And in fact, I always admire when a movie does that, where they take, you know, very early on, they make a bold statement that says, you know, innocence is not going to be a get out of jail free card for this movie.
Right. You gotta toughen up, you know. And that's kind of a recurring thing in this movie is the parents trying to show their kids how to survive and how to take care of one another.
It's very natural selection. The kid not capable of shutting his freaking mouth.
Well, it's not that he shuts his freaking mouth. He turns on a toy, a space shuttle.
Which he was warned against literally seconds before that.
But the daughter gives him the toy back, and then he takes the batteries.
Well, it's great because it shifts the blame in several directions. You know, the father should not have taken the toy and the batteries and set them down next to each other. The daughter should not have given the toy back, and the son should not have taken the batteries when he was given the toy.
Right.
So everyone feels guilty, which creates this great, like, it's not just, it's not even really a full horror film. It's more of a thriller as well as a family drama. And with the shame and the guilt that the father and the daughter feel with the son's death.
And what makes it even worse,
realized.
What makes it even worse is the fact that they can't emote verbally.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They have to do it through sign language or through other means. They can't get out, you know, what they want to get out. They can't just let out, you know, like, I'm so sorry about what happened or whatever. Yeah. They can do it through sign language and stuff, but it's maybe not as therapeutic, possibly. Like, you get the sense that at any moment these characters just want to scream. They just want that one moment where they can do that and not be worried about getting killed.
Complicating matters even more is the fact that, by the way, just so you know, the daughter is deaf, and actually
is deaf in the movie, and the actress is also deaf.
Yes.
Why did you say "just so you know"?
Yeah, we already knew that. That's
what? She's fucking deaf? That changes everything.
That changes the whole thing. Yeah.
Well, just so you know, it's more about the actress herself.
Yes.
Which she does really. John Krasinski actually actively campaigned for.
Yeah, that was really cool on his part. And the movie is getting, in my area, an open caption screening, which is kind of a special thing because I wasn't even aware that movie theaters, especially in my area, but also nationally, don't always cater to the disability community as well as they should when it comes to descriptive, you know.
Right. There are devices that a lot of theaters carry that allow any movie to have descriptive
audio
accessibility, and caption things like that. But it's very, you know, it's not a perfect solution, and it is, you know, it's unfortunate that theater doesn't, you know, that more theaters don't have that accessibility, particularly since, really the Americans with Disabilities Act requires it.
Right, exactly. But I think it's kind of cool that they're doing this, and it's actually getting a lot of buzz around town in the community, not just disability community, but just the community at large. But it's really cool that a movie like this, especially like a movie that's kind of as dark as this is, or that this movie gets to, can kind of rally up this, community of people to come and support it, because of its inclusive nature. I think that's really cool. And
the irony being is that this movie about sound, about lack of sound, is really about sound in a lot of ways.
It's very much about sound. There's these great sound mixing and sound effects. Like when the daughter has a hearing device that doesn't really work because she's deaf, but it's not supposed to be like a solution to her hearing absolutely everything. It's supposed to like help her hear certain frequencies or something.
Well, I mean, the goal is to be able to help her hear at all. And,
okay. I didn't understand exactly what the purpose was at first, but I felt like it was to help her, at least hear her immediate, area.
Well, depending on the level of deafness that you have, there are those devices can assist you with hearing.
Okay.
If you get the right frequency, things like that.
But what's cool is every time she turns it on or off or whatever, or the movie switches to her perspective, everything gets dead silent.
Mm-hmm. I think
there's a void of audio.
I really hope this movie gets at least a nomination for Academy Award for sound editing and mixing.
Yeah,
I'm sure it will. I'm sure it's a lock.
It has to be. I mean, because that was fantastic, and not only that, but with those shots, like the monster sneaking up on her and it's totally silent because she can't hear it. But also when John Krasinski's character and his son are at the waterfall and they're screaming into the waterfall because they can't be heard. And then you get a cut to, a ways back from the waterfall, and you can't hear them at all. And it's a fantastic how the movie switches between these shots and how external noise can affect what the noise of the characters are making, and how they're not heard, but from outside of it, but you can hear them when you're right next to them.
What I especially loved was how not just sound was used, but how it was kind of weaponized in this movie.
Yeah.
And I guess that would be a spoiler getting into the ending, how they kind of figure out a way to at least attack the creatures by using sound, but also by how the filmmaker or the filmmakers, the crew, how they utilize sound as a way to tell the story on a deeper level for the audience.
Yes.
Like there's this bit where a character has to make a sacrifice, but at the same time, they're also getting out a lot of anger and emotion. It's a chance for them to kind of purge themselves of this anxiety or this worry or this nagging feeling that's been on their back for all this time. But it's also a chance for them to save the lives of someone else. And it's this big moment, and it happens, and it was like really cool to see and hear.
Even though the scream was kind of silly sounding.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it wasn't. That wasn't the point. The point was he was exercising the stress that he had, and B, saving some people.
Are you saying that your own scream isn't weird sounding? Because
everyone has a weird sounding scream, I think.
Yeah,
most people do, except for Arnold Schwarzenegger. And Stallone. Stallone know how to scream.
So how about that nail?
I have no mouth, but
there's a running meme online that the nail is like a main character in villain. Yeah, it's pretty funny. It's pretty fucking funny. Emily Blunt. I mean, oh my god, that whole sequence where she's about to give birth. And she has to be extremely quiet, and she's running into obstacle after obstacle, including the nail in the ground. It kind of
reminds me of the scene in Pulp Fiction where John Travolta is trying desperately to save the life of was it Mia or something?
Uma Thurman, yeah. I think it's Mia. Yeah,
and it's just like one of those things where fucking everything that can go wrong is going wrong right friggin' now.
Yeah, right at this moment. Thank you, God. One of those. And she has to go downstairs. She has to go back upstairs. She steps on a nail. The nail gets right into her foot. She yelps a little bit, and that attracts the attention of the creatures. She then has to hide, create a diversion, go upstairs, get in the tub, have the baby, not scream as much as she can. There's just so much going on.
There's so much going on, and I think in regards to that, the movie's use of jump scares was pretty good.
It was woven into the use of sound,
except for when the husband comes home and he's like, "Oh, the bathtub's empty. Oh my God, they took her!" And then like, bah! And then she slams her hand against the shower because she's
that indicates
come
that she was
on,
having,
man. That's not good.
That indicated she was having sex with someone.
Yes, it did.
Because her hand hit the glass.
Her hand hit the window.
Call back.
Yes. No, of course it didn't mean that. But
yeah, I mean that was one of the only gratuitous jump scares in the movie. The rest of them were pretty good. They were earned.
Yeah, I like the one where they're in
the as many jump scares as you would assume a movie like this would have.
Or if there are, they're very clever.
Yes.
Or at least cleverly used. I like the ones in the corn silo when the two kids are trapped in there, and then it switches to the perspective of the girl, and then you see the monster, and it's moving, and it's making sound, but you can't hear anything. And the fact that that she can't hear anything is even more frightening because it's like you're scared for her.
Yes. That actually somebody on Reddit put it incredibly well when it comes to how this movie is frightening and intense. Is that you're not scared about the monsters, you're scared for the characters.
Right. Yeah, the monsters were, as far as their design,
they were Cloverfield monsters.
The design was fantastic.
The design was nice. They were very frightening characters, very frightening creatures, but they looked a lot like Cloverfield monsters.
Kinda, yeah. They look like Venom, actually.
Venom. That's what I thought. I thought of Venom too, and their ears were. I guess the design of that was a little different. But
it reminded me of the Robert Zemeckis. If you remember the Robert Zemeckis Beowulf movie, the way Grendel's ear was depicted as this weird gaping like asshole.
What was Hawk? What are you saying, Hawk?
What if the creatures in A Quiet Place are better Venoms than the Venom movie?
Oh, I don't know. I would hope that Tom Hardy is going to do a good job, but
Tom Hardy's in it, so that alone gives me some.
It's got some weight to it off the bat.
Well, I trust Ruben Fleischer to make a good movie. So
yeah, but we don't know. Obviously, we won't know until more footage comes out and until the movie comes out.
Yeah, when you say more footage, that makes a lot of sense because that teaser is like.
I kind of like that teaser because it was bold. It was like, let's just not show any glimpse of this. Of him as Venom.
But it also kind of sucked because it had a lot of very clear shots that had effects that were not done yet.
Yeah.
Like it's not even unfinished effects. It's shots without effects.
It's almost as if the people editing the Deadpool trailer based that whole joke premise on
the green arm.
Yeah, I wonder if they saw an early version of the trailer of the teaser for Venom and like, yeah, we got to make fun of this shit.
I wouldn't doubt it. How was everybody's audience?
My audience was very good. There was a little bit of gasping, but that was mostly reaction from what was happening on screen.
Which is great. I love reactions in a movie theater.
And there was some talking at the very beginning, but I think that was just like someone telling their friend or relative or whatever, okay, the movie's starting, we got to be fucking quiet. And then after that, it was fun.
I was super worried about my audience because throughout the friggin' trailers, there was this girl who probably 20-something woman who was just jabbering over and over again and saying all these comments loudly, and I heard this one guy like audibly go, "Shut the fuck up!" And as soon as the movie began rolling, she shut the fuck up, and so I have to give her credit. It was she obeyed the rules of law.
Okay, all right, yeah.
So my audience was pretty good too. Like again, we had talking during the previews and for the first minute or so of the movie, and then like I had to like cover my mouth and nose because I was going to start laughing because somebody had a can of soda.
Yeah, you can always tell when there's a can of soda.
They wanted to open it, and they picked the wrong time to do it. It was a totally quiet moment, so it was and it was so loud in the theater because this scene was so. It was during the scene where they were playing Monopoly.
Oh, that scene, yeah.
It's just, I almost lost it because it was so, like I felt sorry for them. They were trying to make it quiet. Like you know when you try to open a can,
you're trying to like. Well, you gotta tap it, right? You gotta tap the top of it a couple times.
But even if you tap it, like you tap it to stop from fizzing over. Even if you can tap it all, you can tap it with a hammer.
It's still gonna make a metal sound. Still gonna go.
Tapping the can doesn't help it lose its fizz, though.
I know,
right? Yeah, it'll still make that really audible. So that was really great. But other than that, like my audience was really good. Like they reacted at the right times. There was no screaming, but at the part where something happened, I won't reveal it because it plays into how they fight the monsters. But when something happens that put the characters at a disadvantage, somebody was like, "No." But other than that, like my audience was really good too.
Okay, so, good.
Honestly, one of the best theater experiences I've had in a very long time.
Cool.
All right, last movie to discuss.
We have one more?
Isle of Dogs.
Oh, right. I almost forgot about that. I'm sorry.
Isle of Dogs.
I love dogs.
Oh, yeah, that's the alternate title, right?
That's the phonetic title if you say it the right way.
Yeah. Isle of Dogs. Isle of Dogs.
There you go.
Yeah. So, first of all, I know that there are some people who said that this movie isn't as good as other Wes Anderson movies.
Yeah, I'm one of them.
Why? What about this movie is not one of the best movies that Wes Anderson has ever made? Because
it is one of the best ones he's ever made. However, I would maintain that Fantastic Mr. Fox is the superior stop motion Wes Anderson movie.
You know, I'm even of the opinion that that's not true. I thought this was better.
I think that so. I'm kind of one of those. You guys know this. I can sometimes get distracted by the technical elements of a movie to the point where the story gets overshadowed by the meticulousness of the technical parts of it. So I think the Isle of Dogs is beautifully made. It's astonishing. Like this is one of the best animated stop motion movies I've ever seen.
Yes.
To the point where it kind of distracted from the story.
Oh, so the movie was so well made that you couldn't follow the story? Is that what you're saying?
No, I follow the story. It's just like I think that when it comes to stop motion animation, the animation services
or you won't like it.
No,
Go ahead.
Stop motion, the animation services the story. But in this case, the animation kind of overpowered the story.
How? I'm very curious.
Because watching the animation and how like, wow, they did that and they animated it frame by frame. Like, you know, stop motion animation is you take a picture, you move something an inch, you take another picture, and so on and so forth. And witnessing that craftsmanship was like, I was like, wow, that looks fucking cool. But the story itself kind of felt a little bit cold.
I really enjoyed the story. I just I thought that like that the story was heartfelt, that it was a very at its heart it's the simple story about, you know, a boy's love of its dog and a dog's love of its owner.
Yeah, and, no, totally. Like I love the story. It found
a very creative and colorful way to illustrate that.
It did. Bill, you haven't seen this, right?
Nope.
Okay. No, again, the animation is amazing. Like, I do not want to downplay for a second that the craftsmanship on display in this movie is absolutely top shelf. I mean, this surpasses Aardman and Leica Studios. Like, this is probably the most well done animated movie, stop motion animated movie I've ever seen.
Yeah,
It's astonishing. Although Fantastic Mr. Fox is a movie that I have loved for years. The whimsy in that movie is just fantastic. So I'm kind of biased with my love for that movie. And maybe I've got to rewatch it because I haven't seen it in a couple of years.
and by the way, I'm not shooting down Fantastic Mr. Fox. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I really really loved Isle of Dogs, and I think that the movie in every way was a evolution in both style and substance, really.
Mm-hmm.
Over that of Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Okay.
And yeah, let me say this. I respect that you prefer Fantastic Mr. Fox. I don't understand. I respect it, but I don't understand.
I think what Hawk is trying to say is that not so much the story was overpowered by the pure technical craft, but that the story didn't live up to the technical craft. You know what I mean? Like maybe the story was too simple, perhaps.
Maybe that's a good way of putting it, because Fantastic Mr. Fox is a family drama and a heist movie and a lot of other things, and it's got a lot of stuff going on, and I think maybe that plays part because Fantastic Mr. Fox was based on a story by Roald Dahl, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I thought. I love Roald Dahl, and the complexity to his stories is what makes him one of my favorite writers. Isle of Dogs also had a really great story, but I think I'm just more biased towards the whimsical Roald Dahl style of a storytelling that made that movie superior for me. And also, I've kind of got like there was one time several years ago when I was like, I'm going to pull an all-nighter and watch fucking movies all night and then go to work. And I had a really bad day at work because I pulled an all-nighter.
Yeah.
But one of the movies I watched was Fantastic Mr. Fox. And so that'll always be one of those movies that I treasure because I took an entire night to watch Fantastic Mr. Fox and some other movies. And it kind of has that kind of appeal to me. Isle of Dogs has so much to love, though. The craftsmanship in the stop motion animation, some of the nuances to the animation. So every TV screen, if somebody's watching television, it is actually hand drawn animation instead, or maybe computer drawn, but it's got the flat 2D effect on the TV instead of the stop motion 3D, which was a really neat stylistic idea. And I also love how
kind of animated, like it kind of had the anime look to it in a way.
Yes. And then there's also the fact that there are a lot of sets and shots that use one diorama setting and maybe never used again. And the fact that level of craftsmanship went into one shot, when I say shot in the film, was probably like 50 in the animation, but for one small scene, they put that much effort into creating that setting just for that one tiny slice of film is certainly worthy of acclaim. Like, again, like I don't want for a second to downplay the level of work that went into Isle of Dogs because it's really incredible.
And I don't want to go into too much detail as to the movie's plot and things that happen in it, just because I know Bill, you haven't seen it, so
Nope.
yeah. So this is a movie I definitely do not want to spoil elements of it. Suffice to say, one thing I was really impressed with in terms of the marketing of this movie is nearly everything that you see in the trailer happens in the first like 20 minutes of this movie.
Yes.
And the rest is completely new. And the main reason that's so impressive to me is just it's a wonderful way of making the movie effectively spoiler proof from a perspective of marketing, and that you don't get that enough in movies.
I also like that the characters are, when you get an animated film, you have characters voiced by celebrities, and usually those characters are the celebrities speaking through the voice of the character. But Wes Anderson didn't let any of the characters be the celebrities. It was, it was these characters that happened to be voiced by Bill Murray and Ed Norton and Adrian Brody.
Actually, I don't think Adrian Brody is in this movie, despite
Who
the
am
fact.
I thinking of?
Yeah, you're thinking. Well, Bob Balaban's one of the dogs.
Maybe. In any case, like you don't really listen to like you can recognize Edward Norton's voice, you can recognize Bill Murray's voice, but the characters were not Edward Norton and Bill Murray. They were characters that sounded like these actors.
The only time in the entire movie that I said, "Wow, that's blank actor," was when Harvey Keitel shows up out of nowhere.
Yeah,
and honestly, that was fine. I had no problem with that because he's fucking Harvey Keitel. But
even then.
But let me ask you. There was this moment in Fantastic Mr. Fox that really helped animate, literally and figuratively, the performance of Bill Murray and George Clooney. That was when they're all having dinner. All these characters are having dinner, and Bill Murray's raccoon, I think, or skunk.
Bill Murray's a badger.
The badger, yes. He says like, okay, let's let let's let Mr. Fox speak. And then Mr. Fox stands up and he says something very snarky about Bill Murray. And then Bill Murray like looks around the table like very silently. He doesn't say anything because there's no dialogue for him. But the character is animated to where he's like doing a Bill Murray shifty eye thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very funny. That made me laugh out of anything else in the movie, and that was a great movie. But what I wanted to know is, in Isle of Dogs, is there any moment in that movie where something like that, a vocal performance, is replicated almost completely by the stop motion creation? You know what I mean? And given an additional depth.
Yeah.
There's a lot of attention paid to facial expression in the animation here. And it's really impressive how much effort was put into that for this film. I mean the complexity and level of the subtleties in the animation. I mean the thing with stop motion is subtlety is rarely a thing, and the fact that they found it in this is super impressive.
Well, like one of the scenes that it was later on in the movie, but one of the things that really impressed me is there is a scene where two characters have a kidney transplant.
Yes.
And the doctors actually cut open the first character, remove the kidney, walk off screen, come back around, and slice open the second character and put the kidney in and stitch them both up. Like where in a lesser stop motion film that would have they would have found ways around having to animate all of that, but instead of doing that, they fucking animate all of it.
I'm glad that they went for a PG-13 in this animated film because it allowed them to be a little more adult in the content that they were covering, while at the same time, it didn't completely isolate the inherent kind of kishiness of the animation, and that's a animation is something that is, from a commercial perspective, easier to sell on children. And I say that specifically because I have a dad who immediately rejects most things that are animated unless you really force it on him.
Mm-hmm.
And I work with a dude who I was talking to about the movie and saying how much I liked it. And he said, I usually make it a point not to watch animated movies. Because there's this whole thing out there amongst mostly older people now, but because I think younger generations were brought up with more animation, that maybe it's less of a problem. But there is this feeling amongst people that, you know, when I became an adult, I threw away childish things, and cartoons are childish. It's it's a problem, and I think that this movie overcomes that objection very wholeheartedly. It's a movie that I am actually trying to. My mom apparently has already said that she is taking my dad to go see this movie, so
Oh, cool.
I'll be intrigued by their reaction. If I get anything interesting out of it, maybe I'll report next week. So I don't. Let's not go into any more specific thoughts on the plot of the movie. Did you have any other thoughts on, from a technical perspective, any of the performances, things like that?
I mean, again, it's all technical. Like when you watch a movie, you don't immediately appreciate some of the work that went into it. But then with Isle of Dogs, the more you think on it, the more that it becomes really, really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I say it's easy, quote unquote. Like you can draw or computer animate, a shot of the dogs. It's not a spoiler, but the dogs, a few of them, they're on a trash trolley into a furnace, and they easily avoid a bunch of the mechanisms that would crush and burn and destroy trash. You can do that with the computer or drawing it, but then when you figure that they have to build and then hand animate stop motion wise all of that stuff, it becomes all that more impressive. So again, I don't want to say that I didn't like Isle of Dogs. It's just that the story was a tiny bit less interesting than what they did in Fantastic Mr. Fox, but the craftsmanship in what they did with the animation is just mind-blowing the more you think of it.
Yeah, I mean
it's incredible, like the way it was made. Is again, I had the same problem with Beast of No Nation, is that it is so incredibly well made it kind of distracts from the actual story.
To me that sentence itself is an oxymoron, and I like the movie was so good that it distracted from the
goodness of the film.
Not so good, so well made. Same thing with La La Land. La La Land is a movie that I do not really love all that much, but god damn it, is the technical elements of that film incredible.
Is this a roundabout way of you saying that you just didn't like the story? Maybe
of La La Land?
No, I'm just trying to understand, because on one hand you're saying that the movie was so well made, and the other hand you said that it distracts from the story. Are you saying that the story was a problem?
No, it wasn't a problem. Oh, excuse me. The story wasn't a problem. It was fine. I guess the story didn't really speak to me all that much. It's just that La La Land is such a brilliantly filmed movie that every moment I was like, wow, that's a great shot. That's a cool thing. I like what they did there, rather than being invested in the characters.
I guess the movie speaks to, I mean, well, this doesn't, because you have a dog, right?
Yeah.
As a dog person, how can this movie not speak to you?
It does. I love that this kid flew his plane out to Trash Island just to find his dog.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the actual narrative was like, maybe if the story was about this, focused on the kid flying out and then meeting these dogs and having this adventure with them, as opposed to the dogs having this adventure and meeting the kid, it would be different. Like, I don't want to say that I dislike the story. I really like the story. I really love the movie. I don't know. It's really hard to describe how my brain works when I watch movies like this, where the technical elements overshadow the narrative elements.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here, Hawk. I'm going to recommend you watch the movie a second time and report on it, because I think maybe that you'll now that you've appreciated the technical elements, you'll get more out of the story, perhaps.
I might, and I was sick over the past week, and I'm a little bit sick, and maybe I just wasn't feeling well when I was watching it, and was just kind of like absorbing the visual stuff instead of really thinking about the story. But
okay,
maybe that's what. But I will definitely rewatch it. Like it's not a movie that you watch once and you're done with. Like,
oh yeah,
I'll be seeing it again before the year is done. I can assure you of that.
All right, well. That brings an end to this movieboozer.com virtual pubcast. Hi.
Movieboozer.com.
This coming weekend, movies that are coming out.
Rampage.
Beirut. Rampage.
Will gave that movie a very mediocre score, and I am very disappointed that
Blumhouse presents Truth or Dare.
Oh yeah,
which might be shit.
Yeah, and
probably will be. Yeah.
And quizzically, I was telling Bill this earlier. The one movie of this weekend that currently has the highest IMDb, the highest Rotten Tomatoes rating is Sergeant Stubby, An American Hero. Now, granted, there's only a handful of reviews, but as of Wednesday night, it has an 83%, whereas Beirut has a 79%, Truth or Dare has a 26%, and Rampage is a 46%.
Ooh.
And I'm not going to count Isle of Dogs just because that came out like weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's got like a slower rollout.
Yeah. But now, Beirut was getting some controversy because some people were arguing throwing whitewashing at it, and some people said that about Isle of Dogs too, which I'm like, I just don't get. I mean,
not whitewashed, just almost literally whitewashed, because the white character has an afro. Like, I think that was RogerEbert.com that mentioned that.
Oh, for fuck's sake! First of all, Wes Anderson based the character design literally off of a character in another movie. So I'm going to throw that out right away. And then also, as far as like, a lot of people have said that it's cultural appropriation of Japan. And yes, that's the point of the whole Japanese aesthetic of it, is Wes Anderson has seen a lot of Japanese movies, and he's wanting to make something within that. Why is that a problem?
Yeah.
It's not appropriation in a negative way. It's literally he's appropriating elements of Japanese culture to make his movie. He's not saying that his movie reflects Japanese culture. He's saying this is his fantasy version of it. And I think people are too quick to jump onto that bandwagon these days. So anyway, just throwing that out there.
Throwing that out there.
What's funny is that what?
I said, we're throwing that out to you, snowflakes.
And by the way, I would even say the same thing about if I felt like a movie was legitimately appropriating culture, feel free to challenge me on it too. But I'm just saying that in this case, I don't think it's a negative. All right. So
I was going to say that I think that it's funny that Truth or Dare, or as the official title is, Blumhouse's Truth or Dare, the movie that they literally attach their name to in the title, is one of the lowest rated Blumhouse produced movies. This is our movie. It's ours. Blumhouse's Truth or Dare.
We take all the credit for this.
Yeah, and then it's not like it's worse than everything else that they've made.
Well, I mean, they've had some stinkers before.
The Boy Next Door is a masterpiece. Thank you very much.
That was Blumhouse?
Yeah,
I didn't know that. But either way, the only thing about the Truth or Dare trailer that I find hilarious is that awful CG face smile thing that
Instagram filter.
Yeah, it just makes me laugh so hard, and the whole concept is like it's this demon thing that's telling you that that will kill you unless you play truth or dare.
I will bet actual money that the final shot of the trailer where the main character is banging the dude and she turns into the monster and she's like truth or dare, I will almost guarantee that is either a dream sequence or the final scene of the movie.
Yes. I was about to say the same thing.
I mean, it has to be, right?
Yeah, it totally that cut to credits.
Yes. They're like, ooh, a good thing we killed the monster, let's fuck. And then, like, oh my god, she's possessed now. And then like, and it's like the credits, and there's like this like fucking Godsmack or hard rock plays over the credits.
Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies.
And by the way, unless this monster is literally forcing you to say specific truths, couldn't you easily game the system by just saying truth and then asking someone an innocuous question?
Or like truth. Channing Tatum is divorced.
Yeah. No. Well, truth. Is Channing Tatum divorced?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he is. Oh, okay.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, I guess we beat the game.
Thanks for the info.
I guess probably what it's going to be is that it forces you to say a specific thing or to dare a specific thing. So if you say dare, it's going to be like hardcore.
Yeah, like yeah.
Break my hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, anyway,
I'll be seeing it. So
yeah. And I'll be
why not?
seeing you.
Pass. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Yeah.